Hey everyone, it is Thursday. Not only is that new unemployment claims, but that also means we talk with Jonathan Twomley. How you doing, sir?
I'm great. How are you, Michael?
I'm doing very well. So I trust you saw the new unemployment claims and the continuing claims this morning.
Well, I actually heard about them on the radio on the way up here, and we'll talk about why I'm up in upstate New York again in a minute, but I heard them on the radio. So yes, new claims below a million for the first time in months, which is good news.
Yep, 20
Uh,
weeks.
and, and continuing claims dropping a bit. So
Yep.
that's all heading in the right direction. Yet, as we've said before, our perspective has become so skewed that these numbers sound good and they're still really bad, in the absolute scheme of things. But at least the trend is in the right direction, and it reversed, what we thought we saw happening 2 weeks ago, the last time I was on,
Yeah,
where we thought that the trend was going in the wrong direction.
that's true.
So hopefully we will continue to have good news happen. Although, with schools reopening in the fall, I think it's anybody's guess as to where we go from here. So
Yeah, I'm going to call it generally encouraging news, right? With the caveat that, remember, in the Great Recession, the record was 606 for new unemployment claims, and we did
yeah,
967. So it's still 150% worse, but it does break a trend of 20 weeks above a million, which
yep,
is
yeah.
frightening.
So good news is good news, and we'll take it. Right?
Yes, exactly. So, and then the other thing is, I don't know if you saw this, but I saw a business article about small businesses. They interviewed 2,080 in March and supposedly the same 2,080 in July. Back in March, only 34% of them thought they could survive to the end of the year. Now that's
Yeah.
up to 62 or 63%. So almost a double, almost a
Oh,
double.
really?
Yeah.
Oh,
34 to
well, that's good
63.
news too.
Yeah, so green shoots, they're figuring it out, right? Downing outside. Nobody's
Yeah.
going to make any money, right? They're not saying they're going to kill it, but they're just saying we can survive to the end of the year.
Yeah. Well, it's
Again,
good to see that
encouraging.
many. Yeah, good to see that sentiment change. Although, I mean, if 30 some odd percent of our small businesses go out of business, we're in deep trouble. So
Oh, for
hopefully,
sure.
hopefully the trend will continue in the right direction and more people will be able to survive. I mean, I've seen in my neighborhood, there have been a couple of places that have announced that they're closing, but at least just what I see on a day-to-day basis, I see the local restaurants scraping by with, doing deliveries. Now it's the summer, so they can have outdoor seating, which
Yeah.
seems quite popular.
Yeah.
I'm concerned what happens though with, I think they can reasonably do that through, the early fall at least, through October or so. But when it's
Yeah.
cold, uh, you know, I don't know how, I don't know what's going to happen at that point. So, um, yeah, it's a concern for sure, but let's hope the trend continues in the right direction.
Yeah, we're just going to leave it at that. Good news, trend. We broke a negative trend that was 2 weeks in the making the last time you were on. So we're going to leave it at that. So why don't we talk about why you're in a hotel room?
Yeah, so some people who follow me on my email list may know that I was just in the Finger Lakes, which is in upstate New York, where we come every year. And here I am again, just 4 days after leaving. And the reason I'm back is because I'm looking at a house up here. And so just by way of background, and I'll bring this into why this is relevant as opposed to just me talking about myself. Um, Having been cooped up during the lockdown through the spring, when we came up here the first time back in July, it was such a refreshing, breath of fresh air to be able to just be outside and go to the state parks and do stuff and run around, that my wife, who had resisted buying a house up here for the last 10 years, suddenly said, let's buy a house. So,
Go get one.
yeah, so we had already planned to come back for a second trip in August. And when we came up, so our second trip then became a house hunting trip. And what we discovered really unexpectedly was that I'd been following the housing market here for the last 10 years. And certainly over the last, 6 months or so, what I'd been seeing was houses just sitting on the market, not, you know, yeah, they would sell, but I mean, they'd be selling after 6 months or so. It was kind of a long slog.
Hmm.
And some properties, I saw them go into contract, fall out of contract, go off the market, come back on the market. And it looked like, we would have pretty much our choice of whatever we wanted.
Right.
Then we got here and found that literally, we would be looking on Trulia, looking and finding a house. Oh, let's go see this one. But we can't go see it tomorrow because we have plans with friends. So we'll go see it on Thursday. And then by Thursday, it would be in contract. And
A little different, huh?
yeah, and it just, so the market here has changed dramatically, and it's all because of COVID. And as best I can tell, so what is going on in talking with realtors here is that the towns up here that have the strong school systems, towns like Ithaca, New York, where Cornell is, Trumansburg, which is next to that, a town called Canandaigua, which actually is close enough to Rochester to be a commuting suburb of Rochester. Very good schools there. Towns like that are seeing this influx of people from New York City, from probably Philadelphia,
Yeah.
from maybe Syracuse, maybe Rochester, places like that. Anywhere where people are looking to get out of, more dense areas
Yeah.
into less dense areas, and particularly if the schools are good there. So it's been quite, we came up here with the expectation that, hey, it'd be really easy to find something. And what we found was kind of like running into a buzzsaw a little bit
Wow.
because the market has become so tight. Now, fortunately, we have a little flexibility because we're not looking to move here. We don't really care about the schools. We're just looking for
Right.
a vacation property that we can come up to when we want to escape the city. So that gives us a little bit more flexibility. But we had originally wanted to go to Ithaca because Ithaca is a pretty easy drive from New York. I mean, it's 4 hours, but it's a pretty easy shot from New York, and there's a lot of life there and a lot going on, and so we thought it'd be a good place to have a second house. But that market is, like I said, just hotter than hot, and especially for anything that is turnkey at all, which I think is another interesting thing about the market. It's clearly people who want something now, like they want it fast. They don't want to have to do any work, and it's got to be move-in ready. So anything that is move-in ready is just flying off the shelf. Stuff that needs work is sitting on the market a bit. So clearly, that could present an opportunity too for people who want to flip.
Mm-hmm.
But we also found, though, that something we didn't anticipate. For us, this is going to be, at least partly an income property for us as well. At least wanted to pay for itself and rent, be able to rent it out while we're not using it. But a lot of towns around here have started to pass restrictions against short-term rentals. So, for instance, Ithaca there are basically no short-term rentals in Ithaca. They've decided that, they want the housing to be for people to live in it, not to rent it out for short-term. That obviously it's a huge student rental market, so they haven't messed around with that. But surprisingly, we have found that, so, the first thing you might think is, okay, well, Ithaca, really democratic town, it has a bias against that sort of stuff. So, but what about the rest of the area? Because the rest of the area is pretty Republican. Well, turns out that some very Republican towns also have turned against Airbnb, like Watkins Glen is one where they have a huge, there's a big NASCAR, community. I don't want to say, there's a racetrack there. There's a very famous, road race through the streets of Watkins Glen, and it happens every year. That Watkins Glen has turned against short-term rentals as well. And Geneva, New York, which is another college town, but it's a Republican town, has also literally, we went to look at a house in Geneva, and when we got there, the broker told us that 2 days before, the town had passed an ordinance basically making it impossible to rent your your house short term unless you live there. So we would have to declare Geneva to be our permanent residence and live there 7 months of the year in order to rent short term. So it's interesting to see how that's playing out too. So, we wound up, I'm going to look at a house tonight, which is in a very rural area, which is great for us. It's kind of what we want. Unfortunately, no restrictions on Airbnbs, and also, at least for New York, very low property taxes because it's agricultural. So
Yeah.
Hopefully the house will turn out to be a good one when we get it. But
Very
it's
cool.
been
So
quite an adventure.
yeah, so you're experiencing what we've been talking about for the last, I don't know, 6 or 8 weeks, where people want space and they want it now, and they're going, you're looking at it as a second home, legitimately a second home.
Yeah.
There are people, it sounds like, they're just like, no, we're going to switch primaries, or maybe they were renters in downtown, now they're owners in Ithaca.
And the reason I wanted to bring this up was not to talk about myself, but because we've been talking about this for such a long time, and now I've seen it firsthand, and I've seen it from the buyer side, not from the investor side, right? So, because you and I have been talking about this from the investor point of view, like, hey, this is a good time to be buying single-family rentals because people want to move out to to the suburbs, or move out further than that, move out to small towns. And lo and behold, here it is happening in a place that's, I mean, I'm really surprised, to be honest, it's happening up here, because this is pretty far from any real major population center. Syracuse, I guess there are about 1 million people in the Syracuse MSA, and Ithaca is about an hour from there. But, once you get outside of Syracuse, it's the downtown is very small. It's not like a megalopolis like New York City. I mean, you can it's very you're out of downtown Syracuse very fast and into suburbs where people have more space, and then drive 10 minutes further and you're out into like farmland. So I don't think it's a lot of people coming from Syracuse. Frankly, I think it's people coming from New York City, coming from Philadelphia, and maybe there's some other places I'm overlooking where they might be coming from. And if they're figuring they can work from home anyway, then they're just going to be in Ithaca where the schools are good, and hopefully they won't get quarantined. And
yeah, I really do. I think there's two things that is going to push, that's going to help many suburbs. It won't help all suburbs, but it will help ones with good schools. Space is good, right? You don't want to live vertical. You don't want to live on top of your neighbor, i.e. New York and Philadelphia. But also, I'm a firm believer in, we are going to see a spike in ownership. People were renting in New York, where I just saw this morning an average 2-bedroom Manhattan is $4,200. You can buy a lot of house in Ithaca on a mortgage payment of less than $4,200.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, for sure.
Yeah. So I think net, I think this is the opposite of the Great Depression. The Great Depression was leave the farms, go to the cities. This is leave the cities, not necessarily go to the farms, but at least go to the suburbs. It's happening in towns all around.
Yeah. It's very interesting what's happening. I think the real question is how long does it go on? Like, how deep is the trend, right? Because
is it changing, right? Is it changing the consumer? Yep.
Yeah. Because is it the kind of thing where, like, if we get a vaccine, it'll just stop in its tracks, or is it is there some kind of permanent change that's overcome people in terms of where they want to live, or are we along those same lines? We had the millennial, not the millennial, really starting with Gen X, right?
Yep.
People started moving back to the cities, right? We all grew up in the suburbs.
Yep.
A lot of us, myself included, had a lot of issues with living in the suburbs. It just didn't like it, and wanted urban lifestyle that was more fun and easier to meet people and stuff like that. And I think a lot of people of our generation, and millennials too, felt like, well, why would I go back to the suburbs? Even if I have kids, I still I want to raise my kids in the city and have them experience this. And instead of living in the suburbs. But I think that what's going on now with COVID, may have changed some people's minds about that, where they had been committed to either not going back to the suburbs or holding out as long as they possibly could before they went. And now they're like, what the heck am I paying all this rent for? You know, especially if all the reasons I'm in the city, I can't take advantage of now, right? I can't go to the museums. I can't go to Broadway. I can't go to the restaurants I want to go to. Yeah. Why am I here? And the only place to go is the park, and every other one of the 8 million people in New York City is also in the park right now. Yeah. So, because they also have no place to go. So why am I here? Wouldn't it be nice to have a backyard and be able to, you know, as long as I can't go to a restaurant, if I could like barbecue in my backyard, that'd be happy and make me happy. So let's go find a backyard. So I think it may have changed people who are in that space right now, right? Who have children and who.
I think it's meaningful. We can argue percentages. Yeah. I saw a stat, again, everything is stats these days. 30% of supposedly the workers out there that are employed can work from home forever, right? They're in a job where if they have Zoom and they have access to tools, they can work from home. So whatever that 30% is. People are realizing that, hey, if they got to somehow, you know, educate their kids, they gotta have a gym, right, of their own stuff, because the gym's closed in the associations. You need to have a place in the backyard and a front yard, and I think this is going to change. I mean, this could flip tomorrow if we had a vaccine and everybody was cured. But if this goes through the fall, and the fall is even half as bad as they say it's going to be, this will have changed consumer behavior. And that really leads to something that I had an epiphany on over the weekend that I wanted to share with you. I first shared with Anna, and I got a lot of comments going, talk to Jonathan. So let me kind of play this out for you. So I'm seeing, again, in my market where I live, called the Bay Area, tech workers are moving. And a fair amount of them are actually going to Fresno, right? Fresno is a 2.5-hour drive, so not 4, but the quality of life is just fundamentally different. You can buy, I mean, I'm in a condo that's 1.6. I can buy the most gorgeous 4,000 square foot house for 1.2, just to give you a cost comparison, right? So you get a lot more. And it's an easy drive. It's 2.5 hours. It's 3 freeways. So if you have to come to the office twice a month, no big deal. But what I'm seeing is housing is up. Housing is 1 month supply in Fresno. I think we've shared that. I've interviewed 3 different brokers over the last 7 days, and offers are going 10, 15% above for clean stuff, just like you talked about, right? Move-in ready, all that stuff. So what I'm sensing is Fresno's going to go up in value, probably double digits for the next 18 months. Houses, because it's just cheaper. I mean, the average is now it's 330, right? Just for and then in San Francisco it's 1.2, but the Bay Area is 1.3, so it's just a different ballgame. And they're going to become renters and go owners. But then I'm like, man, if Fresno goes from 1 million people to like 1.3 over the next year or 2, what happens to the infrastructure? Because there's not enough housing. When does owning multifamily become a good thing in Fresno, because it's a metro that grows because of the pandemic? I'm like, shoot, maybe I should be going to buy more apartments, because they built some, but they're building them, you know, North Fresno, which is like the high end stuff. Nothing is affordable. So I'm actually having second thoughts about multifamily in my market. I still think multifamily in San Francisco is terrible. But I'm going, you know what? If you find a market that's going to grow 30%, that doesn't have the infrastructure, that doesn't have the units, it'll take them 2 years to build anything. I don't know. I'm going back on my idea on multifamily in that kind of submarket.
Yeah. I mean, listen, so we had a discussion in my private coaching group last night about being flexible and being, ready to take advantage of new trends that emerge, right? And so, if you and I talking about multifamily in Fresno, you know, 2-3 months ago, might have felt, well, given the cap rates that are there now, it's probably overpriced, and you know, I'm not going to see enough rent growth to really make this an interesting investment going forward. But the calculation may have changed now, because maybe you might be able to say, hey, look, it's worth to me paying a low cap rate on current rents in Fresno because I reasonably believe that I'm going to have substantial rent growth over the next 2 years that's going to grow me into a cap rate that is attractive to me without doing anything. That's the most attractive part, just because of demand forces, not because
no
you
capital
improvements,
no nothing.
Exactly. I mean, that is kind of like a dream situation where you can just get the rent growth from market forces, from increased demand, and not from having to improve the apartments at all. And then look, if you find some value add opportunities, then your opportunity could be even greater. So so I think this, it's funny because we were having the opposite conversation in my group last night. Like, hey, this is a multifamily group, but look, I'm seeing opportunities in places like Ithaca to maybe flip homes, right?
Yeah, no, for sure.
I'm seeing, if you live in a suburb someplace, you may be seeing opportunities to make money in single family rentals, if that's, and who knows how long this is going to go on. The thing that I was advising last night, and I'll give this advice to everybody, is if you see a trend happening, don't make the mistake of saying this is going to go on forever, because it probably won't. And that's how people get out over their skis and they start making bad mistakes and losing money. But if you can say, hey, look, I think this is going to go on for 2-3 years like this, and I have a strategy where I can get in and get out in that time frame, then you should go for it. Because that's opportunity, and that's what investors do. Investors go after, they sense the opportunity and they take advantage of it. So we were talking last night about the fact that, hey, look, this is a multifamily investment group. We're multifamily investors, but let's not be so rigid in thinking all we can do is multifamily, if multifamily is not the most attractive thing to do right now. And there's going to come a time again where it will, or maybe in a market like you're talking about, maybe that is a great place to be thinking about multifamily. If you really can get a good handle on the numbers of people moving there and how that's going to affect rents, or if you see rents starting to climb, then you say to yourself, like, hey, I'd like to get in on this before other people notice what's going on, because that'll push the price up. That future the time, you have to be good on the timing on this too, because
for sure,
what happened is the market will price in that future anticipated rent to the point where now all the advantage is gone and you're going to be really overpaying for the current. Like what'll happen is you'll be down to a 4 cap on property now in order to get to a 6 cap in 2 years.
Right.
Whereas you'd rather be paying a 6 cap now to get to an 8 in 2 years.
Correct.
Right. So the market will price that in if you let it. So the key is to try to spot those opportunities early in the process and jump on them.
Yeah. And the real thing that this came to me, and again, I gave credit when I changed my mind, was a guy named David Portnoy from Barstool Sports. Have you heard of him? Anyways, he's basically saying,
heard him, yeah.
He basically says Warren Buffett's an idiot. All these CNBC guys don't know what they're talking about. Stocks only go up. And basically his whole point of being a wise ass is nobody's ever invested in a pandemic before. It's a different game. All the rules that we've learned for 20 years, right? I have 20 years of experience in Fresno. I was confident in my decisions in 2019. I made the right call, but I never invested in a pandemic before. I've never seen potential population change in Fresno so drastically. I think usually Fresno grows around 2% a year, plus or minus 2%. If what I'm seeing now and they grow 5%, that's already, because they're not building anything, right? The home units are so small. I think housing is going to go from 300, 330 to 430, 450. And then at some point the locals are priced out, and then they have to, they rent. And, and if it goes from 1 million people to 1.3, owning, 1980s, 1970s rental units, not going to be, I won't even have to update them.
Yeah.
So I'm just wanting to play this out with you. Cause again, if you can get in front of that trend and it grows by 30% in population in, call it 2 years, I think you have something. So I just wanted to ask.
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes perfect sense as a theory. Like you have to dig into the numbers and see if it's really, not just like a good idea, but that's really happening. But I mean, I think there's something happening, and why not try to get out ahead of it? I mean, I think, similarly too, like we know that people have been moving from California to, say Nevada for quite some time, right?
For sure.
And this can only accelerate that trend as well. So, I mean, I'm skeptical on. I know there are like big Las Vegas investor fans out there. I'm skeptical of Las Vegas because I think that the pandemic really, until the pandemic plays out and we've seen how far it drops, then it might be good to rush in and buy something. But I think, unfortunately for Las Vegas, the pandemic really hits like really hard in its core industry, right?
Without a doubt.
But other places in Nevada, right, that are less dependent on gambling, could really benefit from this trend. And so who knows? Even in there might be certain neighborhoods in Las Vegas where the work from home people want to move to. From California. So, but if you're local, you can figure that out, right? I mean, I'm not telling everybody they should rush to Las Vegas, but because that's going to be a really granular thing, and I think requires some specialized knowledge. But that could be something to get ahead of, right?
Yeah,
so,
I've actually interviewed Brian Lebo, who's been a broker in Vegas for 25 years or so. First off, Vegas broke the 2006 peak. What is it? In June, 325, and then it broke it again in July, 328. Which makes no sense to me. No sense. Crazy. So yeah, I think Vegas is a bunch of pain. You got to be local. I mean, they have 22% unemployment, and it's getting worse. I mean, Vegas is in pain. But hey, I want to make sure we talk about this mini course you have coming up, because I saw a little tease of it somewhere online. I wanted to make sure I talk about it, figure out what it is, because I like everything that you do.
So, well, thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. So I'm in the process of, I've actually built it, but now I'm just getting all the tech together. But I put together a mini course just specifically on how you get brokers to give you good deals when you're starting out. I know that this is one of the real sticking points for people. And, sometimes people just can't, like, to say, hey, I'm going to teach you everything about multifamily. They're like, a little overwhelmed because like they're not there yet. They need a starting point. So I thought, okay, what is the best place? What is a real sticking point for people just to help them get started and get over the hump? And it's really, getting off a LoopNet and getting to talk to brokers and getting good deals from them, not getting the brush off, or not getting not getting them to send you the crappy deals that nobody else will buy, and hoping that you'll bite because you don't know what you're doing. I wanted to help people get past that point. And so I put together a mini course called, I should have these things off the top of my head, but I don't. But it is about how to get backroom deals. You want to get the backroom deals from brokers. This is the backroom deal course, and it's 8 modules. 8 videos, goes through the whole process of exactly what you need to do. What you'll find out if you take the mini course is that it is exactly the opposite of what most gurus tell you to do. Most gurus tell you, get on LoopNet, find some brokers, call them up, get a meeting. It doesn't. All right. There's a process which I discovered through trial and error, and it works really well. When I reverse engineered it once I got it working and figured out what I had done right. And there's a process to it, but it's quite simple if you know what it is. So I'm offering this mini course, and it's going to be very, very inexpensive when it's available in the next probably 2 weeks. And if you'd like to know more, the best thing to do is either join my Facebook group, the Multifamily Investment Community, where it'll be announced, or join my email list at multifamilylaunchpad.org, and you'll get all the information. So if this interests you, just join one of those 2 groups and you'll find out all you need to know.
Again, folks, I recommend taking a look at it. If you have interest in multifamily, you've got to be able to network with brokers. And I suggest following Jonathan's guidelines instead of the silly people that say, look up on LoopNet, find an agent, call them, take them a coffee. That's not how to do it.
Yeah. And frankly, even if you're interested in any kind of real estate, this is going to help you. Yeah. This is not just for, even though I focus on multifamily myself, this will help you with any broker. And frankly, this will help you in business in general. Like if you want to meet somebody in business, you can take what's in this mini course and kind of apply it to pretty much anything else you want to do where it comes to getting on somebody's radar, getting them to talk to you. So
Very cool.
I think it'll be helpful. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, Jonathan, good luck tonight. Sounds like you're going to go check out some property. So I'll reach out to you via text or something and see how that went. Should be exciting.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. We've already previewed it. We had the agent go and take some pictures and video for us, and she said she thought it was a good property. So I'll go check it out with my own eyes, and then see what happens.
Very cool, man. Well, take care of yourself. Good luck.
Thanks. See you soon.